It's Wednesday, July 6th. His knives were taken away, but no one stopped him from buying guns. We start here.
He dropped his rifle and he blended in with the crowd and he escaped.
New details about the man who allegedly attacked a 4th of July parade near Chicago.
Some of it far-right content, some of it indicating mental health issues.
Authorities say there were red flags all over the place, but he was able to buy a weapon anyway. The UK's Prime Minister has made it through several scandals, but he hasn't been faced with this.
Why would Boris Johnson hire him again, knowing that he'd been found guilty in an internal investigation?
What sent members of his own cabinet over the brink? And he was the poster boy for the angry, violent young man. Now he's free again.
What were your attitudes towards President Reagan?
See, that's where my illness was at play, because I actually liked President Reagan.
40 years after shooting a president, John Hinckley describes how much times have changed, but have they changed enough? From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. There's something about a 4th of July parade. It brings out the people who inherently trust in this country's ability for good. Nicholas Toledo came to this country from Mexico in the 1980s. He became a dual citizen. Living in Illinois, his family said he loved to fish and to take walks around Highland Park. But on Monday, his family said he was smiling, watching an American marching band in his adopted homeland. He was killed at the age of 78 by a hail of gunfire.
It is with a heavy heart that I bring to you the names of the victims of that tragedy.
Yesterday, authorities revealed the identities of 6 of the people killed in this mass shooting. The oldest was 88-year-old Stephen Strauss, who took the train every day into Chicago, where he still worked as a financial advisor. The youngest victims were 37-year-old Kevin McCarthy and 35-year-old Irina McCarthy. The two were married, and they were the parents together of a toddler. Their child was found later with a stranger who had picked him up in the chaos. Catherine Goldstein was killed, as was Jackie Sunheim, who taught at her local synagogue.
The synagogue calls her a cherished member, known for her kindness and her warmth.
These were people who loved their community, who loved their country. But yesterday, as other victims described their wounds and their shattered Independence Day celebrations, authorities revealed that now a 7th person has also died.
The Lake County State's Attorney's Office has charged Robert Cremo III with 7 counts of first-degree murder.
So as we get a clearer scope of this tragedy, we're also getting a clearer view of the suspect. So to get a better sense of all this, let's bring in ABC senior investigative reporter Aaron Katursky. And Aaron, we've heard what it was like on the ground. What are the police now saying about what the alleged shooter was doing and how he got away?
They're saying, Brad, that the suspected shooter, Robert Cremo, had been planning this attack at least for several weeks, if not longer than that. He popped off more than 70 rounds on that Independence Day crowd, killing 7 and injuring more than 30.
We anticipate dozens of more charges centering around each of the victims. Psychological victims, physical victims, attempt murder charges, aggravated discharge charges, aggravated battery charges.
Police say he was able to climb a fire escape ladder to the top of a building, hopped on the roof, and then opened fire with a rifle that he had legally purchased before scrambling back down and escaping through an alleyway.
He dropped his rifle and he blended in with the crowd and he escaped. He walked to his mother's home, who lived in the area.
Police saw surveillance footage of the suspected shooter disguised as a woman, and that, they said, helped him blend in with the crowd as he made his escape. It also may have concealed his tattoos, which are many, and may have kept police, at least in the initial moments, from identifying him quickly.
So who is he? And do police have any sense as to why, if that's true, why he would open fire on a parade?
They still haven't said why. They have not been able to pin down an exact motive, but there is a history of aggression and violence. Police said that in April of 2019, they were called to his home. A family member said he had attempted suicide.
This was a delayed report, so Highland Park still responded to the residents a week later, spoke with Cremo, spoke with Cremo's parents, and the matter was being handled by mental health professionals at that time. There was no law enforcement action to be taken.
And then in September 2019, There was an episode where a relative called police saying he was going to kill everybody inside the home, meaning his family members, police said.
The police removed 16 knives, a dagger, and a sword from Cremo's home.
But police said there was no mechanism to make an arrest.
Wait, so police are called to the house after he expresses thoughts of violence. He's already allegedly attempted suicide, and police find lots of weapons at the house, take them away, and then he's able to go out and buy more weapons? I mean, did he get this rifle that he allegedly used after this encounter with police?
It seems like he purchased the weapons after this threat to kill his family. Police said at the time, in September 2019, he had all those knives and the sword and a dagger, but there was no indication he possessed firearms.
So he didn't have a pending application, so there was nothing to review at that time when we got that notification. We didn't know, and a few months later, something else would happen.
They were not really able to explain how it was that after that he was able to legally purchase 5 guns, 2 rifles, 3 handguns, including the AR-15 style rifle that police believe was used in the massacre July 4th.
Okay, so that's everything police had. There's also this significant online presence he allegedly had. Can you help me put that in perspective? Because it is kind of tempting to take a look at one post or one picture and say, oh, he's that kind of guy. But police are drawing a pretty complicated portrait here.
There is a really deep-seated anger and violence and obsession with death in a number of social media posts, but nothing that is leading police to definitively say, yes, that was the motive. They have found all sorts of posts, some of it far-right content, some of it indicating mental health issues, some of it just indicating that he was really detached or becoming detached from reality. They also did find indications of depictions not only of violence, but also of the very root of the parade that he ended up allegedly shooting up. So police are trying to see just how far back his alleged planning went.
ABC News has reached out to social media platforms, and tonight YouTube, Vimeo, and Twitter telling us they're removing the dangerous content associated with Cremo.
And they're developing a picture, Brad, from these social media posts of someone who is fixated on death and darkness and may have been obsessed with any number of different causes.
Wow, yeah, and in the meantime, you had this package of gun laws that was just passed by Congress, signed by President Biden. It's not a given that any of that, if implemented already, would have stopped this crime from happening. Again, no actual restrictions on weapons in that new law. Aaron Katersky, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brad. Next
up on Start here, the UK has seemed on the verge of losing its prime minister for a year, so why do insiders say that moment has finally arrived? We're back in a bit.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive. Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Elizabeth Holmes found guilty on 4 counts of fraud, facing the possibility of decades in prison. Now, we take you inside the courtroom and behind the scenes. The Dropout, Elizabeth Holmes on Trial. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
Hey, my wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Tonight, is any place safe? The latest on the victims. Are the changes in gun reform enough to put an end to this crisis? More Americans turn to World News Tonight with David Muir, the most watched program on all of television.
Tomorrow, the new Bachelorettes are dishing on it all live on GMA. What do they want you to know? Plus, deals and steals on the comfiest, coziest must-haves ever on Good Morning America.
One of the most disastrous things that can happen to a world leader is to lose a vote of no confidence when your own party, your own team, votes to kick you out of your job. Well, for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, that did not happen.
I'm grateful to colleagues. I'm grateful for the support they've given me.
He survived a vote of no confidence just weeks ago. But the second worst thing that can happen is to have your own cabinet start to resign in protest. Well, now that has happened overnight and has thrown one of the most important governments in the world into complete disarray. ABC's Guy Davies is based in London. And Guy, I feel like in the US, cabinet members resign all the time. It seems like every 5 minutes in some terms for US presidents. Is this truly a crisis for Boris Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a serious problem for Boris Johnson, and it has all the hallmarks of a concerted effort to get rid of him as Prime Minister. These aren't run-of-the-mill resignations.
The Prime Minister took us all for fools. He held people sacrificing contempt. He showed himself unfit for office.
You know, you go back to Partygate and that previous no-confidence vote you alluded to. That was a major scandal, and that went on for months and months and months. It dominated British politics this year, and that, if you remember correctly, was about the illegal gatherings that took place in Downing Street and other government residences during lockdown in 2020.
I will address its findings in this statement, but firstly, I want to say sorry.
Now, he received a fine for that, becoming the only sitting Prime Minister to be found to break the law while in office. But he survived a no-confidence vote. That was a motion brought forward by Conservative lawmakers in his own party who said that his explanations around all of that furore wasn't satisfactory.
I know what the issue is. Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes. It's whether this government can be trusted.
But essentially, enough lawmakers in his own party backed his leadership. He only needed a simple majority to survive, but it did leave him badly wounded, which takes us to last night and these 2 senior cabinet ministers stepping down.
Yeah, who are these people? Like, if this was a coordinated effort to take Boris Johnson down, why do these 2 people carry so much weight?
First to go was Sajid Javid, the health secretary. But crucially, just after, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's essentially the second most powerful man in government, followed suit and offered his resignation, saying he didn't have faith in Boris Johnson's leadership. And he's been a key ally for the Prime Minister all the way through the pandemic and after.
And what are they resigning over? Because this is a different scandal than Partygate, it sounds like.
So yeah, this is actually completely different to Partygate, which actually relates to the conduct of a more junior minister by the name of Chris Pincher. Now, last week, he resigned over alleged sexual misconduct in a bar. There was a story of drunkenness that came out in the tabloid press, and he offered his resignation pretty immediately to the Prime Minister.
Last week, the Prime Minister said that he knew nothing of specific allegations about misconduct by the member for Tamworth. Then he claimed he had only been aware of reports and speculation. But, Mr. Speaker, the truth is out today, and that defence has been completely blown apart.
But it turns out that Pincher has faced very similar charges in the past, which would beg the question, why would Boris Johnson hire him again, knowing that he'd been found guilty in an internal investigation?
Last week, when fresh allegations arose, the Prime Minister did not immediately recall the conversation in late 2019.
And then when he was asked about this in the aftermath of that resignation last week, Boris Johnson did what his critics have always accused him of doing. He claimed he knew nothing about these allegations to begin with. And over the past few days, that line from Downing Street has quickly began to unravel.
If I had my time again, I would think back on it and recognise that he wasn't going to learn.
Now, the Prime Minister has since admitted he made a mistake in rehiring Pincher, but that line wasn't good enough for Javid and Sunak and a host of other junior members of the government. But the Prime Minister has moved quickly, looking to reappoint them and say, you know what, this is business as usual. I'm still in charge, despite this massive crisis.
Yeah, because that's the thing, Guy. If you're Boris Johnson, wouldn't you say, hey, like, I get that people are upset, but this isn't even something I did. Like, this is something somebody else allegedly did. I also just survived a no confidence vote. Like, good luck holding another one. Isn't there a statute of limitations on these types of votes?
Yeah, there is. It's British politics is strange in terms of how you get rid of a prime minister. I think a lot of it is based on the idea of goodwill, that Boris Johnson will do the honourable thing and resign. He's lost the faith of his party. He's lost the faith of some key allies. But really, there isn't that mechanism in place to get rid of him. There's been talk already amongst some lawmakers suggesting that they will have to change the rules and appoint a new executive to actually force him to resign. But for the time being, he seems to be clinging on to power. The next election is still a few years away, but the Conservative Party are always paying attention to the polls, and the Conservative Party has taken a real hit with Partygate and a number of other scandals. And Boris Johnson is at the centre of it. He seems to embody what critics say is a decadent government that is failing really to deal with any of the manifold crises that Britain faces right now, whether he's garnered praise for how he's handled the crisis in Ukraine, but you have the cost of living, you have all kinds of things going on. And these scandals seem to threaten to overshadow anything that his government tries to do at every turn.
Yeah, we saw the praise he got from British people when he went to Ukraine. Now some people are saying he would need to bring Volodymyr Zelensky back into London to get his numbers back up based on what we just saw overnight. A huge story unfolding here in British politics. Guy Davies, thanks for walking us through it.
Thanks, Brad.
We heard earlier about the suspect in the Highland Park shooting investigation, a young white man allegedly angry, allegedly enamored with violence, with access to weapons. It's not a unique story. At this point, there are extensive profiles of other shooters like this. In fact, if you go back before Uvalde, before Newtown, before Columbine, there was another prototype for a brazen public attack, the man who shot Ronald Reagan.
The blonde assailant, the suspect, was later identified as John W. Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado.
Well, last night, we saw what this man became 40 years later, because John Hinckley himself sat down with a co-anchor of Nightline, ABC's Juju Chang. And Juju, thanks for being with us. This seemed like this kind of bizarre full circle moment for one of America's most notorious criminals. Why did you want to talk to him?
Well, for several reasons. First of all, he is one of the most notorious criminals in American history. I mean, his assassination attempt in many ways changed the history of gun control in this country.
Get him out!
And there are 1, 2, 3 persons on the ground.
One of the men he shot, in addition to President Reagan, was his press secretary, Jim Brady. And Jim and Sarah became lifelong gun control advocates and helped pass the Brady Law.
Mr. Brady, if you were to speak with President Bush, what would you tell him?
It's a good bill and you're a good man, and sign it.
Until then, there had never been a background check and a waiting period, and it was fascinating to have this conversation with John Hinckley today. What were your attitudes towards President Reagan?
See, that's where my illness was at play, because I actually liked President Reagan. I thought he was a good, nice man. I thought he was a good president so far. So that's where the illness comes in. So if you think that, John, why would you want to, try and take his life?
The other reason we wanted to talk to him, Brad, is that he's now, for the first time in 41 years, enjoying fully unfettered freedom.
I was the most scrutinized mental patient in America. Even my judge said that.
Now, in mid-June, that became gone after court order. So he's now really a test of the idea of redemption, right? If you think criminals or mentally ill people deserve redemption, John Hinckley is a test case in many ways. Do you ever worry that you might relapse?
No, I take my meds. Even though I don't have to now, I still take my meds.
I read that you take an anti-anxiety and an antipsychotic. Is that right?
Yes.
And so what makes you feel that you can be trusted? I mean, do you trust yourself?
I do.
Not to relapse?
I've always felt the meds help, and I still feel that way. So I will continue taking the meds.
It's believed that Hinckley bought two .22 caliber handguns in October 13th of last year, 1980, it was before the election, for $47 each at a Dallas pawn shop called Rocky's Pawn Shop.
Does that mean that he thinks somebody like him should have access to a gun? Like, does he think he should have been subject to, you know, more gun control restrictions back then? If this all comes down to kind of the intersection of, you know, young, angry, perhaps mentally ill people and firearms, does he think that, you know, that applies to somebody like him?
Well, I asked him how he felt about the Brady laws. Ushered in a waiting period and background checks.
Right.
Especially with regard to people who are suffering mental illness.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I certainly don't think the mentally ill should have access to guns. I mean, that's kind of obvious.
Those are the red flag laws that are being discussed right now in government and in the gun reform movement.
Background checks are good and waiting periods are good. I mean, I think there's too many guns in America.
And coming from you, that's quite a statement.
Well, I hope it is.
This was a very current conversation, even though this is a man whose crimes were committed 4 decades ago.
What does he think about those crimes 4 decades ago? I mean, did he give you a sense of does he think about them much differently now, or has he just served his time and kind of moved on?
Absolutely. I asked him about his Jodie Foster fixation, and he explained, yes, I made this assassination attempt trying to win Jodie Foster's affections.
I had the delusion back in 1981 that by shooting the president, I could impress Jodie Foster, which me saying that now, it's ridiculous, but that's what I believed back then.
He said, to me today, that sounds disordered, right? And he said, that's how disassociated I was. That's how mentally ill I was. But then he also admitted that he felt like he was going to go there that day and be shot by police.
It was in ways like a suicide attempt, just saying, this is it, this is the end of my life.
He thought he would be killed in a suicide by cop.
Oh, before that was really something we talked about that much in American culture.
Absolutely. That somewhere in the deep primordial parts of his brain, he thought he was not going to survive this criminal action. And when I asked him to crystallize, what do you think happened to you 41 years ago? Definitely he had a psychotic disorder. He was depressed. But he said, if he would sum it up, he said it was isolation.
I was just totally depressed, totally despairing of my life. I thought I had nowhere to turn. I had become totally estranged from my family. That was the worst part of it.
And all I can think about is how many people out there right now are suffering loneliness and isolation during this epidemic of isolation that the pandemic has brought on. And we know these epic numbers of depression and anxiety cases that we're seeing, and it's really alarming.
And sounds familiar to so many of these mass shooters that we've seen as well.
Absolutely. And I think that at a time when we're trying to look at ways to deal with, in his case, he was acquitted by reason of insanity. And he was treated for 40 years with therapy, with medications, and in psychiatric care. And yet that is the kind of funding stream that doesn't exist. His parents went on to found a nonprofit to give money for mental health services. And that is something that in many ways is what's sorely needed today.
I'm truly sorry, I really am. I'm not sure they can forgive me, and I probably wouldn't even blame them if they don't forgive me, but I'm just so sorry for what I did, and if I could take it back, I surely would.
The reason why he sat down with us is that he wants the world to know that he's not the same man he was 41 years ago.
Do you accept his apology?
I do not accept his apology.
We did talk to Danny Spriggs, who wasn't injured, but ended up being his arresting officer and knew his colleagues in the line of fire that day.
I believe in rehabilitation for individuals for certain crimes. In this particular case, we had 2 individuals who received injuries that disabled them for the rest of their lives.
And who felt like somebody who tried to assassinate the President of the United States still needs some oversight and monitoring, and wasn't prepared to be fully in the camp of, yes, let's forgive and forget.
Yeah, a challenging interview, I think, for the interviewer and for the listener as well. Really interesting. Juju Chang from Nightline. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Brad, always.
And one last thing. It's tough to make anything a box office smash these days, so Universal Pictures has been thrilled with the opening weekend of its new Minions movie. Minions: The Rise of Gru made more money over July 4th weekend than any film in history. And yet some movie theaters are actually canceling screenings because of people in formal wear. If you're on TikTok, you might have seen this trend of so-called gentle minions, where people are encouraged to show up to the movie in suits and sit stoically until those yellow minions arrive on screen, in which case you go bananas. Remember, this is a movie aimed primarily at families with little kids. So if you're one of those audience members, suddenly you're sharing the cinema with maybe a couple dozen teenage boys who are screaming at the screen, in some cases throwing popcorn. Some theaters reported small-scale damages, and that's all in addition to the crying children.
And the entire place is rammed with people in suits. They're all chanting, proper rowdy bunch.
It's created a standoff. The studio, who's tweeted encouragement of this trend, they want the business, and the theaters who've had to deal with the effects of that business. Some theaters overseas actually canceled screenings and posted signage warning that you'll be turned away if you show up in formal wear. There are audience members who say it's made the movie way more fun, that these rambunctious young men aren't despicable at all. But that's just it. In a world where movies are the places to act out your favorite memes, where performing for the camera is part of the outing, you can't be sure whether the drama will be on screen or in the seats. The sad thing is, I think about how I totally would have done this when I was in high school, because I could not be convinced that everything was not about me. Like, attention and a movie? Yes, please, sign me up. Also, despicable plug on our part. You should check out ABC News on TikTok. It's actually a really good account. You should also check us out on Twitter, on Instagram. We're at Start Here ABC. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.